Welcome to my channel. Subscribe, listen, and enjoy my stories every day. Leslie slammed the door behind her, the echo reverberating through the quiet house. Our argument had escalated into a shouting match, the tension thick between us. It was always like this lately, a thin veneer of normalcy shattered by the slightest spark. But tonight, something different happened. As Leslie stormed away from me, fuming, a small metallic clink reached my ears. I glanced down at the floor and saw it, a small golden key glinting in the dim light. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just any key, this was her key. The one she always kept hidden. The key to her secret box, as she called it. I had never seen the contents of that box, despite my growing suspicions over the past months. Whenever I asked her about it, she brushed me off, saying it was just personal things. But my gut had always told me otherwise. Leslie had stormed off upstairs, leaving the key behind. I stood frozen for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, my chance to finally know what she had been hiding all this time. I picked up the key, its weight heavier than I expected. With trembling fingers, I turned toward the small wooden box sitting innocuously on the living room shelf. It had always been there, just out of reach both physically and emotionally. Now, with this key in my hand, the barrier between us felt more tangible than ever. My mind raced as I inserted the key into the lock. What if I was wrong? What if it was nothing but old letters or childhood mementos? But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. I had seen the changes in her over the last year, the late nights at work, the secretive phone calls, the growing distance between us. This was the moment that would either confirm or crush my worst fears. With a soft click, the lock gave way, and I opened the box. Inside, neatly stacked, were letters. Dozens of them. My heart pounded louder as I pulled out the top letter. The handwriting wasn't Leslie's. It was bold, masculine, and unfamiliar. I unfolded the paper slowly, dreading what I might find. "My dearest Leslie," it began. "I can't stop thinking about our last night together. The way you touched me, the way you whispered my name in the dark. I'm counting the days until I can see you again." I dropped the letter as if it had burned my hands. My vision blurred as I reached for another, then another, reading fragments of passion and betrayal. Every letter was from him, her lover, each one detailing stolen moments, secret rendezvous, and plans for a future without me. My hands shook as I stumbled upon the photographs tucked beneath the letters. Pictures of Leslie, smiling in ways she hadn't smiled at me in years, wrapped in the arms of a man I didn't know. There were snapshots of them on weekend getaways, kissing under the shade of trees, holding each other close in hotel rooms. My wife, the woman I had loved for over a decade, was living a life I wasn't a part of, a life built on lies. I could barely breathe. The walls of our home, the life we had built together, seemed to close in around me. Every memory we shared felt like a cruel joke, a facade masking the truth that she had betrayed me in the deepest way possible. I snapped the box shut, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. The anger I felt was like a storm brewing inside me, threatening to consume everything in its path. But as the fury took hold, something else stirred within me, something darker, more calculated. Leslie had shattered my heart, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Divorce would be too easy, too clean. She had to pay for what she had done, and I would make sure she did. I wasn't just going to leave her, no, I was going to destroy her life, just as she had destroyed mine. I paced the living room, my thoughts spiraling. She had no idea what I had just found, and I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I needed time to plan, to figure out exactly how I would ruin her. Every betrayal would be repaid. Every moment she had stolen from me would be avenged. But I couldn't do it recklessly. It had to be perfect, precise, cold. Leslie came back downstairs, her face still flushed with anger from our earlier argument. She glanced at me, not noticing the box now tucked back on the shelf where the key I had slipped into my pocket. "I'm going out," she muttered, grabbing her purse and heading toward the door again. I watched her go, my rage simmering just beneath the surface. She had no idea that everything was about to change. And as the door closed behind her, I knew there was no turning back. I would break her life, piece by piece, just like she had broken mine. But I wouldn't let her go. I would keep her, trapped in the web of lies she had spun, until she had nothing left. No freedom, no escape, no lover. The plan was already taking shape in my mind, each detail sharper than the last. Revenge wasn't just an option, it was inevitable. She had played me for a fool, but now it was my turn. I smiled grimly as I walked back to the box and gently placed my hand on it. This was only the beginning. The story of betrayal had just started to unravel, and the next chapter would only dive deeper into the chaos and vengeance that would follow. As I stood there, with the key to all her secrets in my hand, one thing became clear. Leslie had no idea what was coming next. Leslie's footsteps echoed through the house as she prepared to leave again. The nights out had become routine, always with the same vague excuses about meeting friends or work commitments. I sat in the living room, pretending to be engrossed in the television, my face an unreadable mask. Inside, I was seething, but on the outside, I was calm, almost indifferent. "Are you staying up late again?" Leslie asked, her voice casual, but with a slight edge, as if testing whether I would challenge her. I glanced at her, the woman I had once trusted more than anyone else in the world, and forced a smile. "Yeah, might catch up on a movie. You know me." She nodded, seemingly satisfied with my response. She moved toward the door, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror, fixing her hair just right. It was an old habit of hers, one that used to make me smile. Now, every gesture, every movement, felt like part of the elaborate performance she'd perfected. "How late will you be?" I asked, keeping my tone as neutral as possible. "Not too late. Just a few hours," she replied, her eyes darting to the clock. She was avoiding eye contact, something she had been doing more and more lately. I had noticed, of course, but tonight I didn't push. I let her think I was the same oblivious husband she had been fooling for so long. Leslie grabbed her purse and slung it over her shoulder, giving me one last fleeting smile before heading out the door. The second it clicked shut, my whole demeanor changed. I stood up, my pulse quickening. The time for passive waiting was over. Tonight I would begin my plan. I walked over to the window and watched her back out of the driveway, her car disappearing into the night. As soon as she was gone, I reached for my phone and dialed a number I had never imagined calling before all this began. It rang once, twice, and then a gruff voice picked up on the other end. "Yeah. It's me," I said, keeping my voice low, though the house was empty. "I need you to follow her. Find out where she's going." The man on the other end chuckled darkly. "You sure about this? You really want to know?" I clenched my jaw, the fury that had been simmering for days boiling over. "I already know. I just need proof." "I get it," he replied, his tone serious now. "I'll tail her. I'll call you if anything happens." I ended the call and leaned back against the wall, my mind racing. This was the first step, gathering evidence. I had to be smart about this, methodical. Leslie thought she had me wrapped around her finger, but she was about to find out how wrong she was. The hours ticked by slowly. I stayed up, pacing the house, unable to sit still. My mind replayed every suspicious moment from the past year. The late nights, the mysterious phone calls, the excuses that never quite added up. How could I have been so blind? Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was a message from the private investigator. 2 words flashed on the screen. "She's there." I didn't need to ask where. I already knew. She was with him, her lover. The man who had stolen my wife, my trust, and my life. I could almost picture them together, laughing, kissing, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit them. My hands shook with rage as I typed a quick response. "Get photos. I want everything." There was no reply, but I knew the investigator would do his job. I had hired him for a reason, to gather the evidence I needed to destroy her. But this wasn't just about catching her in the act. No, I needed more than that. I wanted to see the look on her face when she realized I had outsmarted her, when she knew that I held all the cards. The hours dragged on, and by the time Leslie returned home, it was nearly 3 a.m. I heard the soft hum of her car in the driveway, followed by the quiet creak of the front door as she tried to sneak in without waking me. She was so used to me being asleep by now. She probably didn't even consider that I'd be waiting for her. I sat on the couch, my eyes fixed on the doorway, and when she finally stepped into the living room, she froze. For a split second, I saw the guilt flash across her face, but it was gone just as quickly. She plastered on a tired smile and shrugged off her coat. "You're still up?" she asked, feigning surprise. I nodded, my face expressionless. "Yeah, couldn't sleep." She gave a small, nervous laugh and glanced toward the stairs, probably eager to end this awkward conversation and retreat to the safety of the bedroom. "Well, I'm exhausted. I'll head up. You should get some rest." I watched her, letting the silence hang between us, thick with unspoken words. She was on edge now. I could see it in the way her hands fidgeted with the strap of her purse. But I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. That would come later when I had everything I needed. "Good night," I finally said, my voice cold, distant. She hesitated for a moment, sensing something was off, but then turned and walked upstairs. I waited until I heard the door to our bedroom click shut before I let out the breath I'd been holding. The game was on, and Leslie had no idea that she was already losing. The next morning was as mundane as ever. Leslie acted as if nothing had changed, chatting over breakfast, scrolling through her phone, and making plans for the day. But beneath her casual demeanor, I could sense her unease. She was beginning to feel the weight of her lies, though she didn't know just how deep I was digging into them. While she left for her usual meetings, I got a message from the investigator, a series of photographs, timestamps, and detailed notes about Leslie's night. There she was, wrapped in another man's arms, her smile radiant, her body pressed close to his. It was sickening, but I didn't react. I didn't throw my phone or scream. I simply saved everything, tucking it away for the right moment. I would wait. I would let her dig herself deeper, let her think she was safe, until the day came when I would pull the rug out from under her and watch her world collapse. I wasn't just going to expose her. No, I would break her the same way she had broken me. And when the time came, Leslie wouldn't even see it coming. The days dragged on, each one a painful charade. Leslie and I played our parts, husband and wife, seemingly normal, while beneath the surface, the truth rotted like a wound that refused to heal. Every smile she gave me, every casual kiss before she left the house, felt like another knife twisting in my gut. But I kept my composure. I wasn't ready to strike yet. I needed more time, more proof, and more patience. My phone buzzed while I was at work. It was the investigator again. More photos, more damning evidence of Leslie's betrayal. The man in the pictures with her was someone I had never seen before. Tall, well-dressed, the kind of guy you'd expect to see in one of those flashy corporate offices. They looked disgustingly happy together, in every shot. But I didn't respond to the investigator. I couldn't, not here, not surrounded by my colleagues who still thought I had the perfect marriage. My fingers hovered over the phone screen, my jaw clenched. I deleted the message thread after saving the photos to a hidden folder. Tonight, I'd plan the next step. That evening, Leslie came home late again, the scent of her perfume trailing into the house before her. This time, I couldn't stop myself from imagining the way her lover must have smelled her, touched her. I gritted my teeth, the tension bubbling under my skin like molten lava, but I stayed calm. I needed her to think everything was fine. I needed her to let her guard down. "Hey, babe," she said as she slipped off her shoes by the door, her tone light, almost carefree. "Hey," I replied, my voice as neutral as I could manage. She walked into the kitchen, heading straight for the fridge, probably hoping to avoid any deeper conversation. But tonight I had different plans. I wanted to test the waters. "Busy day?" I asked casually as I followed her into the kitchen. She didn't look at me, instead opening the fridge and pretending to search for something. "Yeah, just meetings. Boring stuff." Her voice was a little too high-pitched, her movements a little too fast. She was nervous. "Meetings, huh?" I leaned against the counter, watching her carefully. "You've been working late a lot recently." She tensed, just for a second, before recovering. "Yeah, there's a big project coming up. Lots of late nights." You know how it is. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Must be exhausting. You should take a break sometime. We haven't had dinner together in a while. Leslie finally turned to face me, offering a strained smile. Yeah, you're right. I'll make some time soon. Her lie hung in the air between us, so thin and fragile that I could almost see through it. She turned back to the fridge, pulling out a bottle of water, clearly eager to end the conversation. But I wasn't finished. I began, my voice calm. I was thinking we could take a weekend trip, get away from all this stress. Just the two of us. Leslie paused, the water bottle halfway to her lips. For a moment, she looked trapped, like a deer caught in headlights. A weekend trip? Yeah, I continued, my eyes never leaving hers. Maybe somewhere quiet, just to relax. We could drive out of town, leave everything behind for a few days. Her hesitation was palpable, and I watched as she struggled to come up with a response. I don't know, she stammered. Things are really busy at work right now. Maybe in a few weeks. I smiled, though it didn't reach my eyes. Sure, we'll figure something out. She nodded quickly and muttered something about needing a shower before disappearing upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the spot where she had just stood, my mind racing. She was cornered, but she didn't know it yet. The guilt was starting to show, and that meant she was slipping. Soon she'd make a mistake, and when she did, I would be ready. The next day, I decided it was time to escalate. Leslie had another late night planned, which gave me the perfect opportunity to set the trap. I called the investigator in the afternoon, just before I left work. She's seeing him again tonight, I said, keeping my voice low as I stood by the window in my office. Where? He asked, already getting prepared. I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. I'll call you when I have something. I hung up and drove home, my mind running over every detail of the plan. Tonight, I wouldn't just wait for photos or messages. Tonight, I was going to see it for myself. Leslie came home around 6, just as usual. She changed out of her work clothes and into something more casual, though her idea of casual was still a little too polished for someone who claimed to be going to a casual dinner with coworkers. The tension in the air was thick, but she didn't notice. She was too busy playing her role, thinking she was in control. I'll probably be back late, she said as she grabbed her purse. Don't wait up. I gave her a tight-lipped smile. I'll be here when you get back. She flashed me a quick smile and headed for the door. The moment it clicked shut, I sprang into action. I had her phone's location synced to mine, something I'd set up weeks ago without her knowing. I watched the little dot on the screen move as she drove away. The investigator called me back, and I gave him the location. I'm following her, I said. Be ready. I'll be in the area, he confirmed, and hung up. I grabbed my keys and followed Leslie's route, keeping a safe distance so she wouldn't suspect anything. My heart pounded in my chest as I tailed her, watching her car weave through the city streets until it finally pulled into a small hotel parking lot. I parked a few blocks away and waited. The investigator arrived minutes later, pulling up beside me in his beat-up sedan. He rolled down the window, nodding toward the hotel entrance. She's in there, he said, lighting a cigarette. What now? I clenched the steering wheel, my mind spinning. What I wanted to do was storm into that hotel, rip open the door, and drag them both out into the street. But that wasn't part of the plan. Not yet. I needed to be smarter than that. I needed more. We wait, I said, my voice tight. He exhaled a cloud of smoke and leaned back in his seat. You sure? I nodded, my eyes fixed on the entrance. Yeah. Let them think they're safe. I want this to be perfect. As the hours passed, my phone buzzed with updates from the investigator's camera. Photos of Leslie and her lover, laughing together as they left the hotel, arm in arm. The images burned into my mind like a brand. But still, I didn't act. Not yet. I would make my move soon, but it had to be at the right time. Leslie had no idea what was coming. And when it did, it would hit her harder than she could ever imagine. For now, I was content to watch and wait. The web was tightening around her, and soon, she would have no way out. The night of reckoning had come. I sat in the darkness of our living room, a glass of whiskey in my hand, the bottle sitting half empty on the table beside me. The silence of the house was suffocating, but I welcomed it. Soon, it would be shattered by the truth I had been waiting so long to reveal. Leslie wasn't home yet, but I knew she would be soon. This time, I had made sure of it. The trap was set, and there was no way out for her. My phone buzzed on the table. It was the investigator. I glanced at the message. They're on their way back. You ready? I stared at the screen for a moment, feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction wash over me. This was it. I had spent weeks planning this moment, every step calculated, every detail meticulously crafted. Now it was time to execute. I responded with a single word. Ready. About 30 minutes later, I heard the sound of tires crunching on the gravel driveway. I set down my glass, straightened my shirt, and walked over to the window. Leslie's car was pulling in, and sitting in the passenger seat, just as I had expected, was him, her lover. They were laughing, completely oblivious to what was waiting for them inside. I had left the front door unlocked on purpose. I wanted them to walk in carefree, thinking they had gotten away with everything. The thought of their smug faces as they stepped into the trap I had laid for them made my blood boil with anticipation. The door opened, and I heard their footsteps, light and careless. Leslie's voice echoed through the hallway. "You sure your husband's not home?" her lover asked, his voice low, but loud enough for me to hear. "Yeah, he said he was going to be late. We've got time," Leslie replied, her voice casual, as if she hadn't just spent the night betraying the man she promised to love forever. I stepped into the hallway just as they were about to turn the corner. The moment they saw me, everything froze. Leslie's eyes widened, and her lover stiffened, his hands still resting on her lower back. "Going somewhere?" I asked, my voice cold, devoid of any emotion. Leslie's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked between me and her lover, trying to process the situation. It was almost comical how quickly the smugness drained from their faces. I can explain," Leslie stammered, stepping away from the man beside her. "Oh, I'm sure you can," I said, taking a slow, deliberate step toward them. "But I'm not here for explanations, Leslie. I'm here for the truth." Her lover shifted uncomfortably, his hand inching toward the door as if he thought he could make a quick escape. I noticed the movement and smiled. "Don't even think about it," I said, locking eyes with him. "You're not going anywhere." Leslie's face drained of color as she realized that this wasn't just a confrontation. This was something much worse. "I've known for months," I continued, my voice low and menacing. "I've watched you lie to my face, over and over again, pretending like nothing was wrong while you snuck around behind my back." "Listen, man," her lover started, his hands raised defensively, but I cut him off. "Shut up," I snapped, taking another step forward. "You don't get to talk. You don't get to say anything." Leslie was visibly shaking now, her eyes darting around as if searching for a way out of this nightmare. But there was no escape. Not for her. Not for him. "I gave you everything, Leslie," I said, my voice rising. "I trusted you. I loved you. And this is how you repay me?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. Not anymore. She had made her choice, and now she would face the consequences. "Please, we can fix this," she began, but I shook my head. "There's no fixing this," I said, my voice cold and final. "You killed any chance of that the moment you decided to betray me." I turned to her lover, who was now visibly sweating, his eyes darting toward the door. He was a coward, just like I expected. "You thought you could waltz into my life, take what's mine, and walk away unscathed? Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" "Man, I didn't know she was married," he muttered, his voice trembling. "Bullshit," I hissed. "You knew exactly what you were doing. Both of you did." I pulled out my phone, and with a few taps, displayed the photos, videos, and messages I had gathered over the past few weeks. Leslie gasped when she saw them, her face going pale as she realized the extent of what I had. Her lover's eyes widened, and he took a step back, his hands trembling. "You see, I've been documenting everything," I said, holding up the phone. "All of your little meetings, all of your lies. And now I'm going to make sure everyone knows." Leslie collapsed into a chair, her face buried in her hands as she sobbed uncontrollably. Her lover looked like he was about to bolt, but I stepped in front of him, blocking the door. "You're not leaving," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Not until I'm done." I turned back to Leslie, who was still sobbing, her shoulders shaking with each breath. "You're going to lose everything," I said, my voice steady and calm. "Your reputation, your friends, your job. I'll make sure of it." Her lover, now fully panicking, tried to push past me, but I grabbed him by the collar and shoved him back against the wall. "You're not going anywhere until you hear this," I growled. I pulled out a piece of paper from my pocket, a list of every email I had prepared to send. It was addressed to her work, her friends, and her family. I held it up for them to see. "I'm going to send this," I said, smiling cruelly. "Everyone will know exactly who you are. Both of you." Leslie's sobs grew louder, her hands shaking as she looked at me with pure terror in her eyes. "Please don't do this," she begged. "I'll do anything. Just don't." But I had already made up my mind. This wasn't about mercy. This was about revenge. With one final tap, I hit send. The emails were out. The photos were attached. The videos were uploaded. There was no turning back now. Leslie's lover shoved past me, making a run for the door. "Good luck," I called after him, watching as he stumbled out of the house in a blind panic. He was nothing more than a fleeting memory now, but Leslie. She had to stay and live with what she had done. "I hate you," Leslie whispered, her voice hoarse, broken. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over me. "Good," I replied softly, "because I'll never see you again." And with that, I walked out the door, leaving her world in ruins, just like she had left mine. The final chapter had been written, and our story was over forever. Now start next story. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. It was an unremarkable Tuesday evening when I first noticed the changes in Barbara. The air was thick with the scent of autumn, and the leaves were beginning to carpet the ground in shades of gold and crimson. I came home from work, expecting the familiar warmth of our small house, but instead, I was greeted by a silence that felt unsettling. "Barbara?" I called out, but only the echo of my voice answered. The house was dimly lit, the curtains drawn tight as if to hide whatever had transformed within our once inviting home. I wandered into the living room, where I found her favorite chair empty. That was when I noticed the first sign, the array of black clothes draped over the backrest. My heart sank. I brushed my fingers over the fabric, a soft, flowing black dress, something I had never seen before. It was then that I caught sight of her in the mirror hanging in the hallway. The reflection revealed a startling image. She had dyed her hair a deep, sultry brunette, cascading over her shoulders in waves. It was as if a completely different person stared back at me. And yet, there was something familiar hidden within the new darkness. "Hey you," I said, trying to mask the unease creeping into my voice. "I didn't recognize you." She turned, a smile dancing on her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just experimenting," she replied, a hint of something coy in her tone. "What do you think?" I hesitated. "It's different. You look good, but..." I trailed off, uncertain how to express the unsettling shift in her demeanor. "Don't worry about it," she laughed lightly, brushing it off. But as the days passed, her transformation deepened. Black became her staple, her closet now filled with dark hues and gothic accents. The laughter that used to fill our home slowly faded, replaced by the silence that wrapped around her like a shroud. One evening, the weight of unease became unbearable, pushing me to search for answers. I left for work early the next day, feigning an errand so I could return home unexpectedly. As I entered the house, a strange noise caught my attention, muffled laughter and soft, seductive whispers. My heart raced as I followed the sound down the hallway to our bedroom. I pushed the door open, my breath hitching in my throat at the sight before me. There, in our bed, was Barbara, her back arched in pleasure, a man tall with long black hair and painted lips between her thighs. He was the embodiment of everything I had come to despise about her new lifestyle, a goth with a devil-may-care attitude, lost in the throes of passion with my wife. Time seemed to freeze as I stood there, shocked into silence. My stomach twisted, rage boiling beneath the surface. How could she betray me like this? The image of their entwined bodies burned into my mind, a permanent reminder of her betrayal. "Barbara!" I finally shouted, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. She turned, wide-eyed, a mix of shock and guilt flooding her features as she realized I had caught her in the act. "John, I didn't mean for you to see this," she stammered, scrambling to cover herself. "You didn't mean for me to see? You mean you didn't think it was wrong?" I spat, my fists clenching at my sides, fighting against the urge to lash out. "I was just exploring myself. I thought you'd be okay with it." She trailed off, but I couldn't hear her excuses over the roaring anger in my ears. "Exploring yourself? With him?" I pointed at the man who smirked at me from the bed. What a fucking joke. The confrontation spiraled into chaos. I unleashed all the pent-up frustration and hurt that had built since Barbara's transformation. Each word felt like a dagger aimed at her heart, but she had already made her choice. In the aftermath, I walked out, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge. She had shattered my trust, my marriage, and the very essence of our life together. As I slammed the door behind me, I felt an unexpected resolve form in my chest. I would not let this betrayal define me. Barbara had changed for him, and in the process she had lost everything that made her my wife. I would ruin her destiny just as she had ruined ours. Divorce was only the beginning. The days turned into weeks, and as I planned my revenge, I could almost feel the taste of victory on my lips. I would watch her downfall unfold, piece by piece, and savor each moment of her regret. The intrigue was just beginning, and I was determined to see it through to the end. The days following my discovery felt like a blur. I moved through the motions of life, but inside, I was a storm of emotions: anger, betrayal, and an insatiable need for revenge. Barbara had crossed a line, and I was determined to make her understand the gravity of her actions. It started with a simple idea. I needed to gather evidence, something that would force her to face the reality of what she had done. I grabbed my phone and began to document everything I could find. Photos of her new style, the late nights, the strange men I saw lurking around our neighborhood. Each image felt like a small victory, a step closer to the reckoning I envisioned. One evening, I decided to confront Barbara directly. I needed to see her reaction when I laid the evidence out before her. My heart raced as I returned home from work, knowing this moment would be pivotal. The air felt thick with tension, as if the very walls were aware of the impending confrontation. I walked into the living room where Barbara was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up, and a flash of something crossed her face. Fear? Guilt? I couldn't tell, but it fueled my resolve. "Barbara," I said, my voice steady but low, "we need to talk." Her eyes narrowed slightly, suspicion creeping into her demeanor. "About what? I thought we were done with this." "About your new lifestyle," I replied, watching as her expression shifted from irritation to defensiveness. "And the man you've been seeing? What are you talking about?" She shot back, her tone laced with disbelief. "You're just being paranoid." "Paranoid?" I echoed, crossing my arms over my chest. "You think I'm paranoid? Let's see how paranoid you are when I show you these." I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the photos I had collected. "You think changing your style is going to hide what you're doing? You think I wouldn't notice the long-haired goth lurking around our house?" "John, put that away," she snapped, but I could see her resolve weakening. "I won't. You need to face this, Barbara. You're living a lie, and it's about time you admit it." I flicked through the images until I found one of her laughing with the man, a moment that felt intimate, private. I held it up for her to see. "Is this what you want? Is this who you want to be?" She looked at the photo, her expression shifting from defiance to shame. "That's not. It is. You're in bed with him and you want to pretend it's nothing. This is your life now." My voice rose, the anger spilling over. "What happened to us? What happened to our life?" "I was trying to find myself, John," she argued, standing up now, her hands clenched into fists. I felt trapped, and you? And you thought cheating was the answer? I interrupted, incredulous. You think this is finding yourself? You're destroying everything we built together. Barbara opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. For a moment, we stood there, locked in a silent battle, our shared memories flooding back, the laughter, the love, the promise of forever. But those memories were tainted now, overshadowed by her betrayal. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the flicker of guilt battling with the defiance she had built up around herself. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she finally admitted, her voice softer, almost vulnerable. Then what did you think would happen? I shot back, my heart racing as the adrenaline surged through me. Did you think I would just sit back and accept this? That you could have him and me too? Her eyes narrowed again, a flash of anger igniting her features. You're being unreasonable. This is my life. And that's the problem. I shouted, my frustration boiling over. You've made it all about you while I'm left picking up the pieces. Do you even care about what this is doing to me? She opened her mouth as if to respond, but then closed it again, a mix of emotions crossing her face. Finally, she seemed to deflate, her shoulders slumping slightly. What do you want from me, John? I want you to understand the consequences of your choices, I said, my tone softer now. I want you to realize that this isn't just a phase or an exploration. You're throwing away everything we had for a fleeting thrill. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and for a moment, I thought I might break through. Maybe we can talk about this, figure it out, she suggested hesitantly. I stepped closer, locking eyes with her. There's nothing to figure out, Barbara. I can't trust you anymore. You've chosen your path. I let the weight of my words hang in the air before continuing. I want a divorce. The silence that followed felt like a lifetime. Her expression shifted from disbelief to heartbreak as the reality of my declaration sunk in. You don't mean that, she whispered, her voice trembling. I do, I replied, my heart aching but resolute. You've made your choice, and now it's time for me to make mine. I'll ruin your life just as you've ruined ours. You may have found a new identity, but I'm taking back mine. With that, I turned and walked out, the heavy weight of finality hanging in the air. I could almost taste the bitterness of revenge on my tongue. This was only the beginning, and I felt a surge of satisfaction knowing that the next phase of my plan was set in motion. I would watch her world crumble, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but the emptiness of her choices. The intrigue had only begun, and I would savor every moment of her downfall. The days that followed my confrontation with Barbara were a whirlwind of emotions. I settled into a routine filled with work, gym sessions, and late-night brainstorming about how to execute my revenge. But I was careful, no rash decisions. I needed a plan, something that would strike deep and hit hard, a way to ensure she felt the weight of her betrayal. I began by gathering information. It wasn't hard. The whispers of her new lifestyle echoed through our social circles. Friends who used to be ours slowly began to choose sides, some reaching out to me in concern while others, including Barbara's closest friends, rallied around her, feeding her excuses. One evening, I received a message from Claire, a mutual friend who had been closer to Barbara. The text was simple yet laden with concern. Hey, I know things are rough right now. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. I stared at my phone, debating whether to reply. But as I considered her offer, an idea began to form. What if I used the very people Barbara relied on against her? I typed a quick response. Can you meet me? I need to know what's going on. Claire agreed to meet me at a local coffee shop, and I prepared myself for the conversation, knowing it would be crucial to my plan. When I arrived, I spotted her sitting at a table by the window, stirring her coffee absently, a frown etched across her brow. Hey, thanks for meeting me, I said, sliding into the chair opposite her. Of course, Claire replied, her eyes darting around nervously. I've been worried about you. How are you holding up? I shrugged, trying to play it cool despite the storm brewing inside me. I'm okay, just trying to figure things out after everything. She nodded, glancing down at her coffee. Barbara told me she's been exploring herself. I didn't realize it had gone this far. Exploring? I scoffed. More like destroying. She's with some goth guy now. God knows what he's promising her. I leaned in closer, lowering my voice. Have you seen her lately? This isn't just a phase for her. She's changed completely. Claire looked conflicted. She told me you were being unreasonable, that you didn't understand. Understand what? I leaned back, crossing my arms. That she's chosen to throw away our marriage for a fantasy. I need you to help me, Claire. What do you know about her and this guy? She hesitated, biting her lip. I've seen them together a few times. He's different, you know. Dark, mysterious. Barbara seemed infatuated. But I didn't think it would lead to this. Infatuation doesn't last, I said, my tone turning cold. But it can lead to consequences. I want you to help me make sure she understands what she's done. Claire looked shocked, her eyes wide. John, what do you mean? Listen, I need you to keep an eye on her. If you can find out more about this guy, where they go, what they do, I can use it against her. I want her to see what her choices have cost us. She hesitated, but I could see the wheels turning in her mind. I don't know, John. This sounds extreme. It's just a way to show her the truth. I insisted, lowering my voice to keep the other patrons from overhearing. You know she needs it. I can't just walk away while she destroys everything we built. Finally, after a moment that felt like an eternity, Claire nodded slowly. Okay, I'll see what I can do. But you need to be careful. This could blow up in your face. Trust me. I've thought it through, I replied, the adrenaline surging through me. I just need to get to her before it's too late. As I left the coffee shop, I felt a rush of anticipation. The pieces were falling into place, and the plan to confront Barbara again with concrete evidence was shaping up nicely. Later that week, I received a message from Claire. I saw Barbara with him at a bar downtown last night. I'll keep you posted. I felt a mix of satisfaction and anger as I read her message. This was it, the opportunity one had been waiting for. That night, I decided to follow them. It was time to witness the betrayal firsthand. I parked a few blocks away from the bar and watched as Barbara and her lover arrived, their silhouettes cutting through the dim streetlights. My heart raced as I recognized the goth look, the long hair, the painted lips. He was everything I detested, and yet there was something magnetic about the way he carried himself, something that clearly captivated Barbara. They entered the bar, and I followed, positioning myself in a corner where I could see them without being noticed. The atmosphere was thick with smoke and laughter, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I watched as they shared intimate whispers, her laughter ringing out like a haunting melody. Each chuckle felt like a knife twisting deeper into my heart. My anger flared as I saw him lean in, his lips brushing against her ear, drawing a shiver of delight from her. Look at you, Barbara, I muttered under my breath, my hands clenched into fists. You think this is love? This is nothing but a game. I pulled out my phone, snapping a few pictures of them together, capturing the moment I knew would soon lead to her downfall. With every click, I envisioned the confrontation that would follow, a moment where I would finally expose her for who she had become. But as the night wore on, I found myself grappling with conflicting emotions. The thrill of revenge surged alongside a deeper sense of loss. This was the woman I had loved, and now here she was, wrapped up in someone else's embrace, throwing away our life together as if it meant nothing. Eventually, Barbara and her goth lover made their way to the bar, ordering drinks and laughing together. The bartender slid 2 glasses in front of them, and I watched as she took a sip, her eyes lighting up with excitement. Soon you'll see, I murmured to myself, my heart racing. You will understand the cost of this choice. With a final snap of my phone, I left the bar, my resolve solidified. The confrontation would come, and when it did, Barbara would know the full extent of my retribution. As I walked away, I felt a mix of exhilaration and despair, knowing the storm was only beginning. The intrigue hung in the air, and I was ready for the next phase of my plan to unfold. The night of the confrontation loomed closer, and I could hardly contain my excitement mixed with dread. Armed with the evidence Claire had helped me gather, I felt a sick sense of anticipation wash over me. I had spent countless hours imagining the moment when Barbara would have no choice but to face the truth about her betrayal and the life we once shared. The day arrived, heavy with clouds that seemed to echo my turmoil. I called Barbara, feigning casualness. "Hey, can we talk? I think we need to sort some things out." Her tone was defensive yet curious. "About what?" "I thought we were done discussing our relationship." "I know, but this is important," I insisted, my heart racing. "Just meet me at the park where we used to go." After a moment's hesitation, she agreed, and I felt a surge of adrenaline course through me. This was it. I arrived at the park early, the trees swaying gently in the wind, creating an almost eerie atmosphere. Memories flooded my mind. Laughter, joy, love, before the weight of betrayal overshadowed them all. When she finally arrived, her expression was guarded, her eyes scanning the area as if expecting danger. "What's this about, John?" she asked, crossing her arms over her chest defensively. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "I want you to look at something." I pulled out my phone, the images of her and her lover ready to unveil. "This is what I've been talking about. This is who you've become." As I scrolled through the photos, I watched her expression shift from confusion to shock, and finally to anger. "You've been following me," she spat, her voice trembling with rage. "This is low, John." "Low?" I echoed, incredulity flooding my voice. "You've been sleeping with another man while I've been trying to hold our lives together. You've thrown everything away for him, and you call this low." Her defiance crumbled as she processed the betrayal reflected in the images. "I didn't think you'd ever find out. I thought we could just move on," she stammered, her bravado slipping. "Move on." I laughed bitterly, my heart pounding in my chest. "This isn't just something you can brush aside, Barbara. You have to face the consequences of your actions." She looked at me, desperation filling her eyes. "I made a mistake. I thought I was lost, that I needed to find myself. Can't we fix this?" I shook my head, the cold resolve solidifying in my chest. "No, this is beyond fixing. You chose him. You chose this life over our marriage, and now you need to understand what that means." Suddenly, I felt a rush of satisfaction surge within me. This was the moment I had envisioned, the reckoning I had sought. "I'm going to make sure you remember this, Barbara. I'm going to make you feel the pain you've caused." Her eyes widened in horror as she began to realize the depth of my intentions. "What are you talking about? I've already taken steps to ruin everything you hold dear," I confessed, watching the realization dawn upon her. "I've shared these photos with your friends, your family. They'll know exactly who you are now. Your precious new identity. It's gone." "No, you wouldn't dare," she cried, her voice rising in panic. I stepped closer, my voice low and menacing. "I would. You see, Barbara, you've lost the right to expect kindness from me. I'm done being the one who gets hurt. You made your choice, and now it's my turn to make mine." "You're a monster," she shouted, tears streaming down her face. "And you're a liar," I shot back, my heart racing with the thrill of power. "I hope you enjoy your new life with him, because it's about to come crashing down around you." Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows, her goth lover, his presence filling the air with tension. "What's going on here?" he demanded, eyes narrowed at me. "Just discussing your girlfriend's betrayal," I sneered, taking a step back to include him in our confrontation. "I hope you're ready for the fallout, because it's coming fast." Barbara's face twisted with shock and anger, her world spiraling out of control. "You don't know what you're doing. You're ruining everything." I couldn't help but laugh at her desperation. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. This is the end of your fairy tale, Barbara. You wanted to live in darkness. Enjoy the consequences." The goth stepped forward, fists clenched. "You think you can intimidate her? She made her choices just like you did." "Choices? Is that what you call it?" I shot back. "She chose to betray the vows we made, and now I'm going to show her how the world reacts to those choices." "Enough!" Barbara screamed, her voice breaking. "This isn't helping anything." I felt a pang of something resembling regret, but it was drowned out by the satisfaction of my revenge. You don't get to tell me what's helping, Barbara. You've lost that privilege. The tension in the air felt electric as her lover turned to her, confusion mixing with anger. Is this true? You've been playing both sides. Her silence was damning, and I could see the closing in on her. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could utter a word, the reality of her betrayal settled over her like a dark cloud. I can't believe you, he spat, taking a step back, his expression a mix of disbelief and rage. I thought you were different. I thought you wanted something real. Please, don't do this, Barbara pleaded, her voice shaking. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Don't do what? I taunted, stepping back to allow her lover to process the situation. You've led him on just as much as you've led me on. You're a master of deception. In that moment, her world shattered before her eyes. The facade she had built, the new identity she thought she could embrace, was stripped away. She stood there, exposed, surrounded by the wreckage of her choices. The goth turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the park, her sobs echoing in the silence. I felt a cruel sense of satisfaction watching the devastation unfold. Goodbye, Barbara, I said coldly, knowing that this was the last time I would ever see her. You brought this on yourself. As I turned to leave, I could hear her desperate cries behind me. But I didn't look back. I had taken my revenge, and in doing so, I had also closed the chapter on our relationship forever. In the end, it was not just betrayal that had severed our ties. It was the irrevocable destruction of trust and love. We had become strangers, no, enemies, united only by the memories of what once was, now tainted by the darkness we had each chosen. As I walked away, I felt a strange emptiness settle within me. It was done. The intrigue had come full circle, leaving only silence in its wake.